Hey guys, and welcome to Bedtime History. Tonight, we journey back to a time of grand ambition and terrifying uncertainty, to the edge of a known world and the dawn of a new one. Imagine standing on a creaking wooden ship, the salty air whipping your face, your gaze fixed on a dense, green coastline that seems to stretch on forever. This is the New World, a place of staggering beauty and profound danger. A land that promises boundless riches, but keeps its secrets buried deep within its dark, tangled forests. It is a world where every rustle in the leaves could be a curious deer or something far less welcoming. It's a place where your best-laid plans, your hopes, your very existence, could be swallowed by the wilderness without a trace. Frankly, given the state of 16th century medicine and navigation, you probably wouldn't survive this. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. We'd also love to see where you're listening from tonight, so feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. And now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle, ambient hum, and let's settle in for our journey tonight. You are standing in the heart of London, in the year of our Lord 1584. And let's be honest, it's a bit of a mess. The air is thick with the smell of coal smoke, unwashed bodies, and the ever-present miasma of the River Thames, which serves as the city's primary sewer. The streets are a chaotic jumble of timber-framed houses leaning against each other like tired old men, their upper floors jutting out so far they nearly kiss the buildings across the narrow, cobblestoned lanes. Life is a daily gamble against plague, poverty, and the whims of a powerful and often fickle monarchy. Your world is small, defined by the walls of your city and the traditions of your ancestors. But there are whispers, tantalizing stories, carried on the salty breath of sailors returning from uncharted waters. Whispers of a new world, a vast, unspoiled continent across the formidable Atlantic Ocean. These are not just idle tavern tales. They are the obsession of the wealthy and the ambitious, men like Sir Walter Raleigh. He's a favorite of Queen Elizabeth, the first dashing, poetic, and possessed by a monumental ego, a true Renaissance man. Raleigh has never been to the Americas himself, and he never will, which is a well-known historical fact. But he has a vision. He sees a New England rising from the American wilderness, a permanent foothold that will enrich the crown, spread the Protestant faith, and not coincidentally, make him fabulously wealthy and powerful. He envisions a base for privateering, a polite term for state-sanctioned piracy, against the gold-laden Spanish fleets that dominate the southern seas. It's a vision of empire, and you, in your modest life, are about to be swept up in it. The sales pitch is intoxicating. Promoters describe America as a new Eden, a land of gentle natives, fertile soil that requires minimal effort to farm, and gold and silver just lying around for the taking. They conveniently leave out the bits about brutal winters, unknown diseases, and the fact that the people already living there might not be thrilled about a bunch of pale, heavily armed strangers showing up to claim their land. Historians still debate whether the promotional material of the era was born of genuine, naive optimism or was a deliberate, cynical marketing campaign to lure investors and colonists. It was likely a bit of both. You hear the stories, and you feel a flicker of something you haven't felt before. Hope. An escape from the rigid class structure, the grime, the sheer predictability of your life. A chance to own land, to build something new, to be the master of your own fate. It's a powerful dream. But here is an odd little detail of the time. Many Elizabethans were terrified of strange new foods from the Americas. They viewed the tomato, for instance, with deep suspicion, calling it a poison apple, believing it to be a deadly nightshade. So you're willing to cross a terrifying ocean to an unknown land, but a nice, fresh tomato is where you draw the line. It's a funny sort of bravery. Getting people to sign up requires a bit of glossing over the realities. You're not just signing up for adventure. You're signing up to be a test subject in a grand and incredibly risky experiment. Your sponsor, Raleigh, is risking his fortune. You, however, are risking your life. And as you sign your name to the charter, making your mark on a piece of parchment that feels impossibly important, you can't help but wonder if you've just made the best decision of your life, or the very last one. The recruiter smiles, claps you on the back, and tells you you'll be a lord in the New World. He doesn't mention that the average life expectancy for early colonists is, to put it mildly, not great. It's a bit like a modern tech startup pitch. They promise you I'll change the world and get rich. But the fine print mentions a high probability of burning through all your cash and ending up sleeping in your car. Before Raleigh can send a whole town's worth of people across the ocean, he needs to do his homework. You don't just sail 3,000 miles and plop a settlement down wherever you happen to land. That's a recipe for a very short, very unpleasant experience. So, in the spring of 1584, he funds a preliminary reconnaissance mission. 2 ships, the bark Raleigh and the Dorothy, are kitted out and placed under the command of Captains Philip Amadas and Arthur Barlow. Their mission is simple: sail to the New World, identify a suitable location for a colony, make contact with the locals, and come back with a glowing report that will entice investors and settlers for the main event. You are not on this first voyage, but you are in London, eagerly awaiting the news that will shape your future. The success or failure of this initial trip will determine if your dream of a new life even gets off the ground. The months drag on. Summer turns to autumn. You go about your daily life, but your thoughts are often across the sea, with those 2 small ships, somewhere off a coastline no one you know has ever seen. Then, one day, the cry goes up from the docks. The ships have returned. The city buzzes with excitement. Captains Amadas and Barlow are ushered into the presence of Raleigh and the Queen, and their report is everything Raleigh could have hoped for and more. It's a masterpiece of positive spin. Barlow, the primary author of the report, describes a land that sounds less like a real place and more like a poet's fantasy. He writes of an island, Roanoke, off the coast of modern-day North Carolina. He describes the scent of the island from miles out at sea as being so sweet and so strong a smell, as if we had been in the midst of some delicate garden abounding with all kinds of odoriferous flowers. He speaks of a land teeming with magnificent trees, endless flocks of cranes, and vines so laden with grapes that the very beating and surge of the sea overflowed them. It is, in his telling, a paradise on earth. He also describes the native people, the Secatan and the Croatoan, as most gentle, loving, and faithful, void of all guile and treason, and such as live after the manner of the Golden Age. This is a common historical fact. The initial reports from the 1584 voyage were overwhelmingly, perhaps deceptively, positive. To prove their claims, Amadas and Barlow have brought back tangible evidence, a bounty of exotic plants, pearls, and most importantly, 2 living representatives of this gentle new world. Their names are Manteo and Wanchese. The arrival of these 2 men in London causes an absolute sensation. For you and everyone else in the city, they are beings from another world. They are tall and athletic, with copper skin and long black hair. They wear deerskin clothing and speak a language that sounds like running water and birdsong. They are the talk of the town, from the Royal Court to the grimiest back alley tavern. Here's a lesser-known tidbit. The 2 men had vastly different experiences in England, which would have profound consequences. Manteo, who came from the Croatoan people, was fascinated by English culture. He worked closely with a scientist named Thomas Harriot to learn the English language and create a phonetic alphabet for his own Algonquian tongue. He was curious, open, and saw the English as potential allies. Wanchese, a lord of the Secatan from Roanoke Island, was far more skeptical. He learned some English, but remained aloof and observant. He was less impressed by the power and technology of London, and more concerned about the sheer number of people, the poverty he saw in the streets, and the potential threat these newcomers represented to his own people. He saw the English not as gods, but as men who were numerous, powerful, and potentially dangerous. Historians still debate the full extent of Wanchese's disillusionment during his time in England. Did he witness the brutal English suppression of the Irish, seeing a preview of what might happen to his own people? Or was his suspicion a more fundamental clash of cultures, a recognition that the English worldview of ownership and conquest was incompatible with his own? Whatever the case, a seed of mistrust was planted in Wanchese. For now, though, their presence is a triumph for Raleigh. They are living proof of the promise of America. Mantio's cooperation is highlighted, while Wanchese's reservations are ignored. Raleigh is knighted by the Queen for his efforts. The report is published and becomes a bestseller. The public imagination is fired. It's the 16th century equivalent of a viral marketing campaign. You read the pamphlets. You see the woodcut illustrations, which probably make Manteo and Wanchese look like Greek gods, and you are completely sold. The risk seems to vanish, replaced by a golden vision of abundance and friendly neighbors. Your bags are already half-packed in your mind. The first real colonial expedition is announced, and this time you will be on one of those ships sailing toward that delicate garden on the horizon. The only joke is a cosmic one. You rebasing the most important decision of your life on what is essentially a travel brochure written by two guys who really wanted to please their boss. The year is 1585. The hype generated by the first voyage has reached a fever pitch, and Sir Walter Raleigh is ready to capitalize on it. This time, it's the real deal. A full-scale colonial expedition designed to establish a permanent English presence in the New World. But this is not going to be a quaint village of families. This is a military operation. The primary goal is to establish a fort base for harassing the Spanish and searching for those elusive precious metals. The mission is comprised of 500 men, mostly soldiers, and a handful of specialists, packed into a fleet of 7 ships. You are one of those men. The commander of the fleet is Sir Richard Grenville, a cousin of Raleigh's. Grenville is a man of immense pride and a notoriously short temper. He is a seasoned sailor and soldier, but his leadership style is less inspirational captain and more angry drill sergeant. The governor of the colony-to-be is a professional soldier named Ralph Lane. Your fellow colonists are a rough-and-tumble crew, hardened veterans of the brutal wars in Ireland. And the Netherlands, a few hopeful gentlemen looking to make their fortune, and a smattering of artisans and specialists. There are no women or children on this voyage. This is a man's world, and its purpose is conquest and profit, not community. The voyage across the Atlantic is grueling. You are crammed into a small, damp, creaking vessel that is tossed about by the waves like a cork. The stench of unwashed bodies, bilge water, and seasickness is constant. The food is a monotonous rotation of salted beef, hardtack biscuit that could break your teeth, and stale beer. You spend your days staring at an endless expanse of gray water, your nights trying to sleep in a swaying hammock, listening to the groans of the ship's timbers. It's a bit like a modern-day budget cruise. If the ship was constantly on the verge of sinking, and the buffet consisted entirely of beef jerky and regret. As you approach the Caribbean, the fleet does a bit of shopping, which is to say, they engage in some light privateering, capturing a few smaller Spanish ships for their supplies. This is a common practice for English ships of the era, and a key part of Raleigh's business plan. During one of these stops, a significant event occurs. While trying to navigate a treacherous inlet, the flagship, the Tiger, runs aground. The mighty vessel is battered by the waves, and a huge portion of your precious supplies are ruined by the invading seawater. Your food stores, the grain, the salt, the provisions meant to see you through your first winter, are largely destroyed. It is a catastrophic blow before you've even set foot in your new home. This is not some minor inconvenience. It's a disaster that will hang over the colony for its entire existence. Finally, in late June, you arrive off the outer banks of what will be called Virginia, in honor of the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth. You see the coastline that Barlow described in such glowing terms. From a distance, it looks just as he said, a verdant, lush paradise. But as you get closer, the reality is more intimidating. The coast is a maze of shifting sandbars and shallow inlets, treacherous for your deep-drafted ships. You can hear the roar of the surf, a constant, thunderous reminder of the ocean's power. Manteo and Wanchis, your native guides, are with you. Manteo is eager to be home, to act as a bridge between his people and yours. Wanchis is quiet, his expression unreadable. He slips away from the English encampment soon after landing and returns to his own village. His warnings about the English now given a sharp, immediate edge by the sight of 500 armed men and their massive ships. Here's a curious, little-known detail about the landing. Among the specialists on the expedition was a Bohemian Jewish mineralogist named Joachim Gans. He was brought along to be the chief metallurgist, tasked with smelting ore and identifying precious metals. It was an incredibly progressive and pragmatic choice for the time, as Jewish people faced severe persecution and restrictions in England. Raleigh, a man driven by results, hired the best man for the job, regardless of his background. Gans would set up a workshop at Roanoke, complete with a furnace and crucibles, making it the first science lab in North America. Historians still debate the full significance of Gans's presence. Was it a sign of Raleigh's unusually tolerant views, or simply a testament to his desperate, all-consuming hunt for gold? The immediate task is to find a place to build your fort. You and your fellow soldiers, under the command of Ralph Lane, are ferried to Roanoke Island. It's hot, humid, and swarming with mosquitoes the size of small birds. The delicate garden, Barlow described, smells less like perfume and more like a swamp. The reality of the situation begins to sink in. Your supplies are ruined, your leaders are already bickering, and the friendly natives from the brochure seem to be keeping a wary distance. You were promised a golden paradise. What you've got is a sandy, mosquito-infested island, a pile of soggy food, and a whole lot of work to do. It's the 16th century version of a fire festival. The marketing was amazing, but the reality involves a flimsy tent and a cheese sandwich. You grip your musket, swat another mosquito, and begin the back-breaking work of building a fort in a world that feels anything but welcoming. Now that you've landed on Roanoke Island, the hard work truly begins. Governor Ralph Lane is a soldier, and he thinks like one. The first priority is defense. Under his stern command, you and the other men begin constructing a fortification. It's not a grand stone castle, but a star-shaped earthwork fort, typical of the military engineering of the time. You spend your days felling trees, digging ditches, and hauling timber under the oppressive summer sun. The air is thick with the buzz of insects and the rhythmic thud of axes. Your hands, soft from months at sea, are quickly blistered and raw. The work is relentless, fueled by dwindling rations and Lane's barking orders. But this expedition isn't just about military might. Sir Walter Raleigh, for all his focus on gold, was a true Renaissance man, and he had a thirst for knowledge. To that end, he sent two remarkable individuals along with you, the scientist Thomas Harriot and the artist John White. These two men have a very different mission from the soldiers. Their job is to document this new world. Thomas Harriot is a brilliant polymath and astronomer, mathematician, and ethnography. He works closely with Manteo, refining the phonetic Algonquian alphabet they started in London. He walks the island with a notebook, meticulously recording every new plant, animal, and mineral he encounters. He studies the agricultural techniques of the local people, noting their methods for planting corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters of Native American agriculture. This is a well-known historical fact. Harriet's book, A Brief and True Report of the Newfound Land of Virginia, would become one of the most important and detailed accounts of the pre-colonial environment and people of North America. While Harriet writes, John White paints. With his watercolors and brushes, he captures the world around him with stunning accuracy and sensitivity. He paints the flora and fauna, the strange-looking horseshoe crabs, the vibrant birds, the turtles and fish. But most importantly, he paints the people. He doesn't depict them as savages or monsters, as was common in European art. He paints the Secotan and Croatoan people with a gentle, observant eye, a mother and child, the elders of a village, a warrior in his body paint. His paintings show their houses, their rituals, their daily lives. John White's watercolors are our single most important visual record of the Algonquian peoples of the Carolina coast before their culture was irrevocably changed by European contact. You watch these two men at their work with a mixture of curiosity and scorn. While you're digging trenches and standing guard duty, they're off messing about with leaves and drawing pictures. It seems like a frivolous waste of time. You just want to find some gold, get rich, and go home. You don't realize that their work will outlast any fort you build, their legacy far more enduring than any privateering base. Here's an odd, lesser-known fact about the colonists' attempts to feed themselves. While they documented the natives' successful farming, they were spectacularly bad at it themselves. The soldiers, being soldiers, had little to no experience in agriculture. They planted their English grains like wheat and barley at the wrong time of year, in soil that wasn't suited for them. The crops withered and died in the sandy, nutrient-poor soil and the punishing summer heat. They were surrounded by a continent of abundance, but they didn't have the knowledge to unlock it, and their pride often prevented them from learning from the people who did. Historians still debate the extent of this agricultural failure. Was it purely incompetence and bad timing, or was there also a cultural arrogance at play? The English saw themselves as civilized, and the natives as savages, and they may have been unwilling to fully adopt the savage farming methods that were, in fact, perfectly adapted to the local environment. It is a classic case of trying to force your own methods onto a new situation instead of adapting to it. They were essentially trying to build an IKEA flat-pack shelf with the wrong instructions and half the screws missing. So a strange dynamic develops in the colony. You have the military wing, led by Lane, focused on defense and exploration for riches. You have the scientific wing, led by Harriet and White, focused on documentation. And you have a growing problem. You're running out of food. The damaged supplies from the tiger are nearly gone. Your own attempts at farming have been a disaster. Increasingly, you become dependent on the local tribes for food, trading your English copper pots and iron tools for their corn and fish. It's a dependency that makes Governor Lane deeply uncomfortable. He is a soldier, and dependency is a vulnerability. The initial golden age feeling of friendship described by Barlow is beginning to tarnish, replaced by a tense, fragile relationship built on need and suspicion. You can feel the mood shifting, like the air before a thunderstorm. The fragile peace between your colony and the local tribes is hanging by a thread, and that thread is about to be deliberately cut. The summer of 1585 gives way to a tense autumn. The days are getting shorter, the nights cooler. Your food situation is now critical. The daily begging, or rather, trading, for food from the surrounding villages has become a source of friction. The Secotan, led by their chief Wingina, are growing weary of supporting this garrison of nearly 100 demanding, heavily armed men. You can see it in their eyes. The warmth and curiosity have been replaced by a guarded, weary resentment. They are feeding you from their own winter stores, and they know, as you do, that this is not sustainable. The tipping point comes not from a grand battle, but from a small, petty incident. In the spring of 1586, Governor Lane sends an expedition to a village called Aquascogok. Upon their return, the English realize a silver cup is missing. Just one small silver cup. It was likely not even stolen in a malicious way. The natives were fascinated by shiny European objects and may have simply taken it out of curiosity, not understanding the English concept of absolute personal property. To the English, however, it is a theft, an insult, a challenge to their authority. Sir Richard Grenville, who had returned to the colony after a trip to the Outer Banks, decides that this transgression cannot stand. He is a man of immense pride, you'll recall, and his reaction is swift, brutal, and utterly disproportionate. This is the infamous Silver Cup incident, a well-documented historical event that marks a dark turn in the colony's history. Grenville leads an armed party back to Aquascogok. When the villagers are unable or unwilling to return the cup, he orders the entire village to be burned to the ground and all their cornfields destroyed. You are not part of this raiding party, but you hear the stories when they return, bragging of the smoke that filled the sky. A whole village, a winter's worth of food, destroyed over a single cup. It's a message, and it is received loud and clear by every native person within 100 miles. The English are not here to trade. They are here to dominate. They are unpredictable, and their anger is like a wildfire. The consequences are immediate. One Shiz, who had been suspicious of you from the start, now has all the proof he needs. He begins to actively work against the English, uniting the surrounding tribes under the leadership of Wingina, who has now changed his name to Pemisapen, signifying his new hostile stance. He uses his knowledge of English tactics and weaknesses, learned during his time in London, to plan your demise. Trade ceases completely. The villages that once welcomed you with food now melt into the woods at your approach. The forest, which once seemed neutral, now feels alive with hostile eyes. You are isolated, starving, surrounded. Here's a little known, and rather grim, detail of the colonists' diet during this desperate time. They were so hungry that they boiled leather jerkins and belts to create a kind of beef broth to survive. They also ate their own sled dogs, which they had brought for hauling supplies. Imagine the desperation. You're chewing on a piece of boiled leather, thinking about the promotional pamphlet that promised a land overflowing with bounty. The joke is a bitter one, and it's on you. You're living the 16th century version of an extreme survival show, except there's no prize at the end, and the host is a permanently furious Ralph Lane. Historians still debate the strategic thinking behind Pemisapen's and Wanchese's plan. Was their goal to simply starve the English out and force them to leave? Or were they planning a coordinated, all-out assault to wipe out the colony for good? The evidence suggests the latter. Pemisapen planned to convene a large gathering of warriors for a supposed ritual, then use that force to overwhelm your small, weakened garrison. But Governor Lane, for all his faults, is a canny and ruthless soldier. He gets wind of the plot from Montejo, who has remained loyal to the English. Lane decides on a preemptive strike. He and a group of his most trusted soldiers go to meet with Pemisapen under the guise of a parley. As they meet, Lane gives a prearranged signal the cry, "Christ our victory," and his men open fire. They attack Pemisapen and his advisors. Pemisapen is shot, but manages to escape, wounded, into the woods. An Irish soldier, Edward Nugent, chases him down and returns to the English camp, not just with news of the chief's death, but with his head. The conspiracy is broken, but the situation is now irreparable. You have murdered their chief. You have burned their villages. There is no going back. You are a tiny, hated island of Englishness in a vast and hostile sea of a people you have profoundly wronged. The fort feels less like a bastion and more like a tomb. You scan the tree line, musket in hand, hunger gnawing at your belly, and you know, with chilling certainty, that you cannot survive here much longer. It is early June, 1586. The aftermath of Pemisapin's killing hangs heavy in the humid air. You may have thwarted the immediate plot to destroy the colony, but you've won a hollow victory. The food situation has gone from critical to catastrophic. The local tribes, now united in their hatred and fear of you, have completely vanished, taking their corn and their knowledge of the land with them. Your foraging parties come back empty-handed, having found only abandoned villages and an unnerving silence. The only things you have in abundance are fear and hunger. Morale within the fort has hit rock bottom. The men are gaunt, their uniforms hanging off their skeletal frames. They bicker and fight over the last scraps of food. The dream of gold and glory has evaporated, replaced by the grim, singular obsession of finding the next meal. You spend your days staring out at the empty horizon, praying for the sight of an English sail. Sir Richard Grenville was supposed to have returned with supplies months ago, but the ocean remains stubbornly, terrifyingly empty. Governor Lane tries to maintain military discipline, but it's hard to command an army that's slowly starving to death. It's like being the manager of a company that has not only run out of money, but has also alienated all its customers and suppliers. The only thing left to do is wait for the inevitable bankruptcy. Then, one day, a lookout spot sails. Not the single supply ship you were expecting from Grenville, but a massive fleet. 23 ships in total. A wave of confusion, then elation sweeps through the fort. Who is it? As the ships draw closer, you recognize the flag. It is not Grenville. It is Sir Francis Drake. Drake is a living legend, the most famous and feared English sailor of his time. To the Spanish, he is a pirate, El Drac, the dragon. To the English, he is a national hero, a man who has circumnavigated the globe and returned with a fortune in Spanish treasure. His unexpected arrival at Roanoke is a common historical fact of the first colony's story. He is returning to England from a massive and hugely successful raid on Spanish colonies in the Caribbean, including the sacking of St. Augustine in Spanish Florida. He has decided to stop by Roanoke on his way home to check on Raleigh's enterprise and offer assistance. His arrival is like a miracle. Suddenly, you have access to everything you've been dreaming of. Drake is generous. He offers to resupply you completely. He offers you a ship, the Francis, a pinnace of 70 tons, along with enough sailors and provisions to last for months, allowing you to stay and continue your exploration of the mainland. He even offers to take any of the weak or unwilling colonists back to England with him. It is a lifeline, a solution to all your problems. Governor Lane and his council accept the offer gratefully. Your spirits soar. You are saved, but the new world has one last cruel trick to play. As you are loading the new supplies onto the Francis, a storm of incredible violence descends upon the coast. It's described in the chronicles as a hurricane, a great storm that rages for 4 days. The massive ships of Drake's fleet are forced to put out to sea to avoid being smashed to pieces on the shore. When the storm finally breaks, the Francis, the ship that was to be your salvation, loaded with your new food, your new crew, and all your hopes, is gone. It was either blown far out to sea or sunk. The mood plummets from elation to despair. Drake returns, but his offer has changed. The best he can do now is offer you and all the colonists passage home to England. He doesn't have another suitable ship to spare. Lane confers with his men. You are part of this desperate council. The choice is stark. Stay on Roanoke with virtually no food and the faint, unreliable hope that Grenville might eventually show. Up, or abandon the colony and take passage with Drake back to civilization. Here's an unusual detail from this moment. Thomas Harriot and John White, the scientist and the artist, had to make a frantic choice. In the chaos of abandoning the colony, they had to decide what to take. They were forced to leave behind many of their books and papers, their precious notes, and likely many of White's original paintings and survey maps. What we have today from them is only what they could physically carry in the rush to board Drake's ships. It's a tantalizing and frustrating thought for historians. What wonders of the New World, what insights into its people, were lost on that chaotic day, left to rot in the abandoned fort? Historians still debate Lane's decision to leave. Was it a cowardly abandonment of his post, or was it the only rational choice a commander could make to save the lives of his men? Given the starvation, the loss of the supply ship, and the hostility of the natives, most agree he had no other viable option. The vote among the colonists is unanimous. You are going home, not. It's a bitter, hurried departure. You leave everything behind. The fort you labored to build, the small forge where Joachim Gans looked for gold, the graves of the men who didn't make it. You clamber aboard Drake's crowded ships, a failed conqueror, a starving survivor. As the fleet pulls away from Roanoke Island, you look back at the shore. It is silent, empty, reclaimed by the wilderness. You have been in the New World for a year, and you are leaving with nothing but your life. A story of failure, and, according to a popular but likely apocryphal tale, 3 new crops that you are introducing to England: tobacco, maize, and potatoes. The last part is probably not true. They were already known in Europe, but it makes for a better story. It's the ultimate walk of shame, but at least you get a ride home with the coolest guy in the 16th century. You are now on a ship in Sir Francis Drake's fleet, sailing east across the vast, gray Atlantic. The relief of being rescued is immense, but it is tinged with the bitter taste of failure. You are alive, but the grand colonial project, Raleigh's dream, lies in ruins behind you. The journey home is slow, and as you sail, you have nothing but time to reflect on the year you just spent at the edge of the world. You think about the initial hope, the back-breaking labor, the strange beauty of the land, and the escalating cycle of violence and mistrust that led to your desperate escape. You have failed, but at least you are safe. Meanwhile, completely unbeknownst to you, help was, in fact, on its way. Just a week or 2 after you departed with Drake, a supply ship commissioned by Sir Walter Raleigh finally arrived at Roanoke. It was a lone vessel, loaded with all the provisions the colony had been praying for. The captain sailed into the Sound, expecting to be greeted by a grateful and hungry garrison. Instead, he found only silence. He saw the fort, seemingly intact from a distance, but no English flag flew from its mast. No smoke rose from its chimneys. He and his men searched the island, calling out, firing their muskets. They found the fort abandoned. The small houses were empty, and an eerie quiet had settled over the place. Confused and alarmed, and with no colonists to supply, the ship eventually turned around and sailed back to England, carrying the perplexing news of a vanished settlement. But the story doesn't end there. The cosmic timing of your departure gets even more painfully ironic. About 2 weeks after that supply ship left, another much larger force arrived. It was Sir Richard Grenville himself, the formidable commander of your original expedition, arriving with 3 well-stocked ships. He was the relief force everyone had been waiting for, the man whose delay had sealed the colony's fate. He, too, arrived to find an empty fort and a silent island. Grenville was in a difficult position. He had spent a fortune outfitting this relief mission. He could not, and would not, simply abandon Raleigh's claim to the land. To do so would be to cede the territory to the Spanish or the French. A common historical fact is that to maintain the English presence, however symbolic, Grenville decided to leave a small holding force behind. He selected 15 men from his crew. You can imagine the scene. Congratulations, lads. The 100 men who were here before you have vanished without a trace, but I'm sure it'll be fine. You 15 Stay here and ... hold down the fort. We'll be back in a year, probably. It must have been one of the least popular assignments in naval history. It's like your boss telling you, the last team that worked on this project all quit in a single day, but I'm promoting you to lead it. Good luck. So these 15 unfortunate souls are left on Roanoke Island. They are given provisions to last them for, theoretically, 2 years. They watch as Grenville's 3 ships become smaller and smaller on the horizon, until they disappear completely, leaving the 15 men utterly alone in the vast, intimidating wilderness. Their story is one of the great forgotten footnotes of the Roanoke saga. We know almost nothing about them. Who were they? What were their names? What did they do during their lonely vigil? Here is a strange and somewhat chilling detail that has been pieced together from later native accounts. The 15 men did not fare well. They were a tiny, isolated group in a land where the previous, much larger English force had burned villages and murdered a chief. They were likely subject to constant, low-level harassment by the now hostile Second, led by the relatives of the slain Pemasapan. Native oral traditions recorded by later English explorers suggest that the holding force was eventually attacked. Some were killed, and the survivors were driven off the island, forced to take their small boat to a nearby island on the Sound, where their ultimate fate is unknown. They simply vanished. Historians still debate the wisdom of Grenville's decision. Was it a necessary, if callous, geopolitical move to maintain an English claim? Or was it a reckless and irresponsible act that doomed 15 men to a predictable and violent end? It's easy to judge from the comfort of the 21st century, but in the high-stakes game of 16th century colonialism, holding territory was paramount, and men were often treated as expendable pawns. Of course, know nothing of this as you arrive. Back in England in the late summer of 1586, you and the other survivors are a spectacle. You bring tales of a strange and dangerous land, and you also, according to popular lore, bring the habit of smoking tobacco back with you, a practice which Raleigh himself adopts with enthusiasm. You try to settle back into your old life, but you are changed. The world seems smaller, grayer. You carry the memory of that vast green wilderness, the silence of the forest, the faces of Manteo and Wanchese. You tell your stories in taverns, the tales growing taller with each telling. But as far as you know, the story of Roanoke is over. A failed experiment. A dream that died. You have no idea that Raleigh is not a man who gives up easily, and that the most famous and most mysterious chapter of the Roanoke story is yet to begin. The year is now 1587. You have been back in England for less than a year, and the sting of the first colony's failure is still fresh. Ralph Lane's official report paints a grim picture of the New World: hostile natives, scarce resources, and a general lack of profitable opportunities. The investors are angry, and Sir Walter Raleigh's reputation has taken a hit. For most people, that would be the end of it. Cut your losses. Find a new project. But Raleigh is not most people. He is stubborn, visionary, and perhaps a little bit mad. He is determined to make his American dream a reality. He realizes the mistake he made. The first colony was a military garrison, a privateering base populated by soldiers. It was designed for conquest, not for putting down roots. It had no social glue, no inherent reason to endure hardship beyond a soldier's duty. So Raleigh conceives a new, radically different plan. This time, he won't send soldiers. He will send families. He envisions a proper English settlement, a self-sustaining community of men, women, and children. They will be farmers, artisans, and tradesmen. They won't just be there to extract wealth. They will be there to build a new life, a new society. The plan is to create the city of Raleigh, and to make it more appealing, he offers a powerful incentive: Each settler will be granted a 500-acre plot of land. To a landless tenant farmer in crowded, class-stratified England, this is an almost unimaginable prize. It's the dream of independence, of prosperity, of a legacy for your children. And this time, you're not going as a soldier looking for a fight. You're going back as one of these settlers. Perhaps you're a carpenter, a mason, or a farmer. More importantly, you're not going alone. You're bringing your wife, maybe even a young child. The risks feel different this time. Before, you were only risking your own life for a chance at glory. Now, you're risking your entire family for a chance at a better future. The stakes are infinitely higher. The governor of this new venture is not a military man like Lane, but a civilian. It's John White, the artist from the first expedition. This is a common historical fact of the second colonial attempt. White is a thoughtful, sensitive man who already knows the land and has shown a unique ability to engage with the native people peacefully. He is also personally invested. His own daughter, Eleanor Dare, and her husband, Ananias Dare, are among the colonists. White isn't just a governor. He's a father and a grandfather-to-be, leading his own family into the wilderness. The plan is also different geographically. The destination is not the ill-fated Roanoke Island. Everyone agrees that's a bad spot. It's difficult to reach, has poor soil, and is surrounded by now hostile natives. The new plan is to sail to the Chesapeake Bay, further north. The bay offers a deep water harbor, more fertile land, and is home to different native groups who haven't yet been antagonized by the English. Manteo, your steadfast native ally who has been in England this whole time, will accompany you once again, acting as a guide and an ambassador. In May of 1587, a group of about 117 men, women, and children board 3 small ships and set sail. From England, the mood is completely different from the first voyage. There's an air of nervous excitement, of communal hope. You look around at the faces of your fellow colonists, the hopeful parents, the anxious children, and you feel a sense of shared purpose that was entirely absent from the military expedition. You're not just a company of soldiers. You're a congregation, a fledgling town floating on the ocean. Here's a lesser-known but crucial detail about the voyage. The expedition was captained by a pilot named Simon Fernandes. Fernandes was a Portuguese sailor with a great deal of experience in American waters, but he was also a privateer at heart. He was hired to transport the colonists, but his real interest was in raiding Spanish shipping in the Caribbean. The colonists were, in many ways, an inconvenient side job for him. This conflict of interest would have devastating consequences. Historians still debate the motivations and character of Simon Fernandes. Was he merely an opportunistic privateer, following the profitable customs of the day? Or was he actively sabotaging Raleigh's colonial project? Some theories even suggest he may have been a secret agent for the Spanish, deliberately trying to scuttle the English settlement. The truth is likely more mundane. He was a sailor in a hurry, eager to get on with the profitable business of piracy before the Caribbean hurricane season began. The city of Raleigh and its inhabitants were a secondary concern. For now, though, you are filled with optimism. The crossing is rough, as always, but you have your family with you. You tell your children stories of the new world, perhaps sanitized versions of what you actually saw, focusing on the beautiful birds John White painted, and not the starving soldiers chewing on their leather belts. You talk with your neighbors about the houses you will build, the crops you will plant on your very own 500 acres. This isn't about a quick score. This is about building a life. This is the real dream. You are not a conqueror. You are a pioneer. And as you feel the ship rise and fall on the endless waves, you hold your family close and pray that this time you'll get it right. You are heading for the Chesapeake, a new start in a new land. At least that's the plan. The long, arduous Atlantic crossing is finally nearing its end. The air changes, carrying the scent of land, that same sweet, earthy smell you remember. You and the other colonists are buzzing with anticipation. You are ready to begin your new lives in the Chesapeake Bay. But your pilot, Simon Fernandez, has other ideas. When you arrive at the coast in late July 1587, he refuses to sail further north. He claims the season is growing late, and he's anxious to get to the Caribbean for his privateering work. He insists on dropping you off right here. At Roanoke Island, Governor John White is furious. He argues, he protests, he pleads. This is not the plan. This is the one place you are explicitly told not to settle. It's a place of bad memories, bad soil, and bad blood with the local people. It's like a real estate agent promising you a beautiful suburban house and then dropping you off at a condemned, possibly haunted, shack in the middle of nowhere. But Fernandez is adamant. He has the ship. You do not. He is the master of the vessel, and his word is final. With no other choice, you, your family, and the 115 other colonists are unceremoniously dumped on the shores of Roanoke Island. It is a disastrous start, an act of either extreme negligence or deliberate sabotage by Fernandez. A small party, including John White, goes ashore to make contact with the 15 men that Grenville had left behind the previous year. You are part of this group, your heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. As you approach the site of Lane's old fort, the silence is deafening. You find the fort razed, the houses dismantled, and then you see it. Lying in the weeds, bleached by the sun, are the bones of a single man. Just one skeleton. There is no sign of the other 14 men. No note, no message. Just this grim, silent testament to their fate. The discovery sends a chill through everyone. This is not the welcome wagon you were hoping for. Your new home is a ghost town, marked by a lonely grave. The mood of optimism that carried you across the ocean shatters, replaced by annoying anxiety. What happened here? Where are the other men? Are you doomed to share their fate? Determined to make the best of a terrible situation, you and the other colonists begin the hard work of rebuilding. You repair the dilapidated cottages left over from Lane's settlement, re-establish a perimeter, and try to create some semblance of a home. But the shadow of what happened here looms large. A few days after your arrival, George Howe, one of your fellow colonists, decides to go crabbing by himself in the Sound. It's a foolish, naive mistake. He wanders away from the safety of the settlement, alone and unarmed. He is found a short time later, lying in the reeds with 16 arrow wounds in his body. His face has been beaten with clubs. This brutal killing is a well-documented historical event. It's a clear and terrifying message from the local Second tribe. They have not forgotten the burning of Aquascoke or the murder of Pemisapan. The blood debt has not been paid, and they see you not as new, peaceful families, but as a continuation of the first violent invasion. The attack sends a wave of panic and grief through your small community. You now know for certain that you are not safe. The forest at the edge of your settlement no longer looks beautiful. It looks menacing. Every shadow could hold an enemy. Here's a lesser-known and tragic detail that deepens the sorrow of this moment. The attack on George Howe was likely a case of mistaken identity, but from the native perspective, it was justified. Manteo, your ally, makes contact with his own people, the Croatoan tribe on a nearby island. They explain what happened to the 15-man holding party. A coalition of tribes, led by the still aggrieved Wanshis, had attacked the small garrison. Some were killed, and the rest fled in their boat and were never seen again. When your new colony arrived, the local tribes assumed you were another military force. Howe, wandering alone, was seen as a straggler from an invading army and was killed in retribution for past crimes. historians still debate the precise sequence of events and the motivations of the native attackers. Was the killing of Howe a planned act of war or an opportunistic attack on a lone Englishman? Regardless of the intent, the effect was devastating. It plunged the colonists into a state of fear and paranoia, and it set the stage for a cycle of revenge. Governor White, pressured by the other colonists to retaliate, sends a party led by Captain Stafford, with Manteo as a guide, to attack the Esseg, village of Des Moines Kapuk, where the killers of Howe are believed to be living. You are part of this night raid. You creep through the darkness, muskets ready, hearts filled with a mixture of fear and a desire for vengeance. You storm the village, firing into the dark shapes you see around the campfires. Only after the chaos subsides do you make a horrifying discovery. You have attacked the wrong village. These are not the hostile Secondin. They are Manteo's people, the friendly Croatoan, who were there scavenging the abandoned village for supplies. You have killed one and wounded many others among the only native allies you had. It is a catastrophic, tragic blunder, a mistake born of fear and a thirst for revenge. You came here to build a peaceful community, and within weeks you have a dead man, a skeleton, and have just attacked your only friends. The dream is turning into a nightmare. The aftermath of the botched raid on the Croatoan village is a disaster. You have managed to alienate the only friendly native group in the area. Manteo, to his immense credit, manages to smooth things over, explaining the tragic mistake to his people. They forgive you, but the trust is fractured. Your little settlement on Roanoke Island is now more isolated than ever, a tiny pocket of English civilization surrounded by a sea of justified resentment and newfound mistrust. The days are filled with hard labor, but the nights are filled with fear. Every snapping twig in the dark forest sounds like an approaching warrior. But in the midst of this fear and uncertainty, something wonderful happens. On August 18, 1587, a child is born. It is a baby girl, born to Governor John White's daughter, Eleanor Dare, and her husband, Ananias. They name her Virginia. The birth of Virginia Dare is the most famous historical fact associated with the lost colony. She is the first English child to be born in the New World. Her birth is a profound moment for your small community. It is a symbol of hope, a sign that you are not just a temporary camp, but a real, growing settlement. She represents the future, a future you are all fighting and struggling to build. For a brief time, the fear recedes, replaced by a sense of shared purpose and celebration. You look at this tiny, helpless baby, and you are reminded of why you risked everything to come here. You are here for her, and for the children who will come after her. It's a powerful, unifying moment. Life attempts to settle into a routine. The men hunt and fish, though they dare not venture too far from the settlement. The women tend to the small gardens, cook, and care for the children. You work on strengthening the palisade, the tall wooden fence that surrounds your cluster of cottages. It provides a sense of security, however flimsy. You hold Sunday services, trying to maintain the rhythms and rituals of the life you left behind in England. But the fundamental problems remain. Your supplies are dwindling rapidly. The food you brought with you is running out, and because Simon Fernandez dropped you off at Roanoke so late in the season, you missed the primary planting window. Your harvests will be meager, not nearly enough to sustain 117 people through the coming winter. You are facing the exact same problem that destroyed the first colony. Starvation. It becomes clear to everyone that someone must go back to England to plead your case to Sir Walter Raleigh, to organize a relief mission, and to bring back more people, more tools, and most importantly, more food. The colonists hold a meeting. They decide that the only person who can do it, the only one with the authority and the connection to Raleigh, is the governor himself, John White. White is horrified by the suggestion. He doesn't want to leave, He just became a grandfather. His daughter, his son-in-law, his brand new granddaughter, Virginia, his entire family is here. He promised them he would lead them in building this new world, not abandon them. He argues, the extremity of the time and the present faintness of our victuals constrain me to accept that charge. He only agrees to go after the colonists, put their request in writing, formally absolving him of the charge of desertion. Here's a lesser-known, poignant detail from that time. Before he leaves, White and the other colonists devise a secret code. If they are forced to leave Roanoke Island for any reason, they will carve the name of their destination into a prominent tree or post. If they are in distress or have been attacked, they are to carve a Maltese cross above the name. This is a crucial detail, a prearranged signal for his return. It's a plan born of foresight and fear. It acknowledges the very real possibility that when he comes back, they might not be where he left them. Historians still debate the wisdom of the colonists, sending their only leader away. Was it a pragmatic necessity, the only way to ensure their long-term survival? Or was it a fatal mistake, leaving a vulnerable, frightened community without its head at the most critical time? It's an impossible choice. They are damned if they do, and likely damned if they don't. It's like being in a car that's running out of gas in the middle of the desert. Someone has to walk for help, but that means leaving the others behind and vulnerable. So, in late August 1587, just 9 days after his granddaughter's birth, John White boards the ship for the return journey to England. He stands on the deck, watching his family and his colony shrink into a green speck on the horizon. He has promised to return with all possible speed by the following spring at the latest. He clutches the colonists' written request in his hand, like a talisman. He has no way of knowing that he has just seen his daughter, his granddaughter, and his entire colony for the very last time. And he has no idea that a war brewing in Europe is about to make his promise impossible to keep. You stand on the shore of Roanoke Island, watching the sails of John White's ship disappear over the horizon. There's a lump in your throat. You, your family, and the rest of the colonists are now truly on your own. You wave until the ship is a mere speck, a final fragile link to the world you left behind. The promise of his swift return is the only thing you have to cling to. Spring, he said. You just have to make it until spring. White's journey back to England is a nightmare. This is the part of the story often glossed over, but it's crucial to understanding the delay. The trip is plagued by storms and pirate attacks. His ship is battered. His crew is diminished. He doesn't limp back into an English port until early November, much later than anticipated. And the England he returns to is a nation in crisis. The dominant political and military reality of 1587 is the looming threat of Spain. King Philip II of Spain, furious with English privateering and Queen Elizabeth's support for Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, is assembling a massive fleet. It is the Invincible Armada, an invasion force of unprecedented scale designed to conquer England, depose the Protestant queen, and restore Catholicism. All of England is on a war footing. Every available ship, every able-bodied sailor, every penny in the royal treasury is being funneled into the national defense. This is the well-known historical context that sealed the colony's fate. John White arrives with his desperate plea for a relief mission for a tiny, distant settlement, only to find that the entire nation is fighting for its very survival. Sir Walter Raleigh is sympathetic, but his hands are tied. He is a key figure in organizing the coastal defenses. The Queen has issued a royal stay on all shipping. No vessel capable of fighting is allowed to leave English waters. Your small colony is, to be blunt, a low priority. The survival of 100 people in America is a trivial matter compared to the survival of the entire English kingdom. White is frantic. He spends the winter of 1587 and the spring of 1588 petitioning everyone he can Raleigh, the Queen's Council, wealthy merchants. He is a man possessed, haunted by the faces of the family he left behind. He knows that back on Roanoke, you are watching the horizon, waiting for him. He knows your supplies are dwindling. Here's a less-known detail that highlights his desperation. In April of 1588, Raleigh manages to get special permission for White to lead a small relief expedition of 2 small ships, the Brave and the Roe. These vessels were considered too small to be of much use against the Armada. It's a glimmer of hope. White gets them loaded with supplies and sets sail. But the captains of these 2 ships are greedy. Just off the coast of France, they can't resist the temptation to do a little privateering. They attack some French ships, but get more than they bargained for. A fight ensues, and White's ships are looted and battered, the crews wounded. They are forced to limp back to England, their precious cargo for you gone, the mission incomplete. Failure. It's a heartbreaking setback, a result of the greed and indiscipline of his own men. It's like ordering a pizza for your starving friends, and the delivery driver eats it on the way over. Historians still debate whether Raleigh could have done more. Was the royal stay on shipping absolute, or could a man with his influence have found a way around it if he had truly prioritized the colony? Some argue that Raleigh, seeing little profit coming from the venture and distracted by the war and other courtly intrigues, simply let the colony slide. Others maintain that his hands were genuinely tied by the national emergency. The truth is likely somewhere in between. He was a patriot and a businessman, and at that moment, the patriotic and business interests were focused squarely on the English Channel, not the Carolina coast. The summer of 1588 arrives, and with it, the Spanish Armada. A legendary naval battle rages in the English Channel, thanks to a combination of smaller, more maneuverable English ships, brilliant tactics, and a massive storm that the English called the Protestant wind. The invincible Armada is defeated and scattered. England is saved. The nation erupts in celebration. But for John White, the victory is bittersweet. The war has consumed an entire year. The spring of 1588, his promised return date, has come and gone. It is now autumn. It is too late in the season to safely mount a transatlantic voyage. He has failed. He has broken his promise. He spends another agonizing winter in England, trying to raise funds, trying to secure a ship. Haunted by the knowledge that your colony is facing a second winter alone, their hope in him surely turning to despair. Every day that passes is another day he has failed his family, and he has no way of knowing if there is even anyone left to save. While John White is trapped in England, battling bureaucracy and the Spanish Armada, you are living through the long wait. The autumn of 1587 settles over Roanoke Island. The leaves on the trees turn brilliant shades of red and gold, a beautiful spectacle that does little to comfort your anxious hearts. The meager harvest you manage to gather is stored away, and you know with mathematical certainty that it won't be enough. You are a community of 116 people now, George Howe being the only casualty so far. 116 mouths to feed. The first winter is harsh. Not necessarily in terms of weather. The Carolina winters are milder than in England, but in terms of scarcity and fear. You ration the food meticulously. A handful of corn, a piece of dried fish. Hunger becomes a constant companion, a dull ache in your belly. The children cry. The adults grow thin and weary. You huddle in your small, drafty cottages listening to the wind howl outside, a sound that seems to carry the whispers of your failure. You keep a constant watch from the palisade, your eyes scanning the gray, choppy waters of the Sound for the impossible sight of an English sail. But none comes. Spring of 1588 arrives. This is the moment you've been waiting for. John White promised he would return by spring. Every morning, you wake with a renewed sense of hope. Today might be the day. You look to the sea, expecting, praying. But the days turn into weeks, and the weeks turn into a month. The season for planting comes and goes. The ships do not appear. Hope begins to curdle into a sick, creeping dread. He's not coming. Something has gone wrong. This period, from the autumn of 1587 to the summer of 1590, is the great blank slate of the Roanoke Mystery. It is the time when the colonists' fate was sealed. This is where history ends and speculation begins. What did you do? How did you survive for 3 long years? The most logical and widely accepted theory is that you didn't just sit there and starve. You were practical people. You knew you could not survive on Roanoke Island. Your only hope was to seek help from the native population. But which one? The Secatan on the mainland were openly hostile. But your allies, the Croatoan, lived on a nearby island, modern-day Hatteras Island, about 50 miles to the south. Manteo was one of them. They had forgiven your earlier, tragic mistake. It seems almost certain that you would have made the decision to move. So you make a plan. You cannot stay here. You will abandon the settlement and go to live with the Croatoan people. This theory is a central part of the historical discussion of the colony's fate. The move would not have been easy. It would have involved dismantling your houses for the valuable nails and timbers, and ferrying over 100 people, including many children, across the treacherous waters of the Pamlico Sound in a small pinnace and whatever boats you could construct. But what would life have been like among the Croatoan? You would have had to completely adapt. You would trade your heavy woolen English clothes for deerskin. You would learn to farm the 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash in the native way. You would learn to hunt in the dense forests and fish in the tidal creeks. You would learn their language, their customs, their beliefs. The children, being children, would likely adapt the fastest, playing with the Croatoan children, their English quickly becoming accented with Algonquian words. It would be a complete assimilation. You would cease to be English colonists and would become, for all intents and purposes, part of a Native American tribe. Here is a strange but compelling piece of supporting evidence for this assimilation theory. Over a century later, an English explorer named John Lawson visited Hatteras Island and wrote that he encountered native people there with gray eyes and a tradition that some of their ancestors were white people who could talk in a book. The Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, many of whom have surnames common among the lost colonists, like Dare, Cooper, and Stevens, have long held that they are the descendants of the Roanoke settlers who intermarried with the Croatoan people. DNA testing has so far been inconclusive, but the oral tradition is strong. Historians still debate the nature of this proposed move. Did all 116 colonists go to Croatoan Island as a single group, or did the colony splinter? Some theories suggest that a smaller group, perhaps 24 or so, may have attempted to journey north to their original destination, the Chesapeake Bay, while the majority went south to Croatoan. This could account for some confusing and contradictory native reports from the following years. It's a logistical puzzle. Moving over 100 people is a major undertaking. It's not a weekend camping trip. It's a permanent migration. Imagine the decision. You gather everyone together. The hope of White's return is gone. You look at the hungry faces of your children. You look at the menacing forest. And then you look towards the south, towards Croatoan, towards Manteo's people. It's a leap into the unknown and abandonment of your English identity. But it is also your only chance for survival. The vote is taken. You will go. Before you leave, you carefully, deliberately, carve your destination into a post, just as you promised John White. You would. One single clear word. Croatoan. No cross. because you are not in distress. You are relocating. You are surviving. The year is now 1590. 3 long years have passed since you watched John White sail away. 3 years of silence. In England, White has finally succeeded. The war with Spain is over, and after countless setbacks and false starts, he has managed to secure passage on a privateering expedition heading for the West Indies. It's not a dedicated relief mission. He is essentially just a passenger on a ship, the Hopewell, whose captain is more interested in hunting for Spanish treasure than for lost English families. But it's his only chance. The voyage is, once again, a long and frustrating one for White. The captain, Abraham Coke, does indeed spend months happily raiding Spanish settlements and ships in the Caribbean. White is forced to wait, his anxiety growing with each passing day. He is an old man now, worn down by grief and frustration. His journal from this voyage is filled with a palpable sense of desperation. Finally, in mid-August, on the eve of his granddaughter Virginia's 3rd birthday, the ships anchor off the treacherous coast of the Outer Banks. It is night, and a storm is brewing. The sea is rough. From the deck of the Hopewell, you're now seeing through White's eyes peer into the darkness toward Roanoke Island. You are so close. Your heart is a painful knot of hope and terror. Are they there? Are they alive? Is your daughter, your granddaughter, waiting for you? In the distance, through the dark and the rain, you see it. A flicker of light. A fire on the northern end of the island. A signal. Your heart leaps. A great fire, White writes in his journal. It must be them. They must have seen your ships. They are signaling to you. The sailors on the Hopewell are excited too. They fire off a cannon and play English folk songs. On their trumpets, a joyful announcement of their arrival. But there is no response from the shore. The fire continues to burn, but there is no answering call, no other light. The silence from the island is unnerving. The next morning, the seas are still rough, but you can wait no longer. You and a party of sailors get into 2 small boats and begin the perilous journey to the island. The surf is high, the currents treacherous. As your boat nears the shore, a wave capsizes it. The boat is smashed, and 7 sailors are drowned in the violent surf. It is a horrific start to your search, a dark omen. Your own boat barely makes it to shore. You and your men soaked and shaken. You finally stand on the sand of Roanoke Island. The place is quiet, too quiet. You and your men, armed and on edge, make your way inland toward the site of the settlement. The path is overgrown with vines and weeds. It's clear no one has used it in a long time. As you approach the place where your cottages once stood, you see that the entire area has been enclosed by a high palisade, a defensive fence of large timbers. This is new. The colonists must have built it after you left. It suggests they felt threatened, but it also suggests they were organized and capable. You find the entrance to the palisade. It's not a gate, but an opening where the posts have been offset, like the entrance to a maze. Your hands are trembling as you step inside. You call out your daughter's name, your granddaughter's. Eleanor, Virginia. Only the sound of the wind in the trees answers you. The settlement is gone. The houses have been carefully dismantled and taken down, not burned or destroyed. It's not the scene of a battle. There are no bodies, no signs of a struggle. It looks as if the colonists simply packed up and left. Scattered on the ground, half overgrown, you find several heavy iron bars and some lead shot, things that were too heavy to carry. It's a scene of orderly, deliberate abandonment. Here is a strange detail that White records in his journal. He notes that the ground was covered in fine grass, and the palisade was fresh and strong. This has led some historians to wonder about the timeline. If the colonists left shortly after White did in 1587, Would the palisade still be in good condition, and the ground so clear 3 years later? It's a small but puzzling detail. Historians still debate the meaning of the dismantled houses. Was this a sign of a peaceful departure, with the colonists taking the valuable boards and nails with them to their new home? Or does it suggest something else? Perhaps they were forced to take down their houses under duress by natives who wanted the materials. The lack of any skeletons or signs of violence, however, points strongly away from a massacre at this site. You walk through the empty clearing where your home once stood, where your granddaughter was born. The sense of loss is overwhelming. It is a ghost town, filled with the ghosts of your own family. Where did they go? You search desperately for a sign, for the secret message you agreed upon. You feel a flicker of hope. They were organized, they were methodical. They would have left. The sign. Your eyes scan every tree, every post. And then you find it. Your frantic search for a clue, for any sign of your colonists, leads you to one of the main posts of the palisade entrance. And there, carved in big, clear letters, is a single word. Croatoan. You stare at the carving, your heart pounding. This is it. This is the message. Your mind races back to the plan you made 3 years ago. If they had to leave, they would carve their destination. Croatoan, the home of Manteo's people, your allies. The island just to the south. And then you check for the second part of the signal. You look above the word, searching for the Maltese. Cross you had agreed upon, the sign of distress. It's not there. No cross. This is a profoundly important detail, a central undisputed historical fact from White's own account. The absence of the cross meant that they had not left under duress. They were not attacked or forced out. They left willingly. It was a planned migration. A wave of relief washes over you, so powerful it almost brings you to your knees. They are not dead. They are alive. They are at Croatoan Island. You call out to the other sailors, showing them the carving. The mood shifts from dread to excitement. The mystery is solved. Now you just have to go and get them. As you continue to search the site, you find another, smaller clue. On a tree nearby, the letters CRO are carved. It seems they started to carve the message there, and then decided on the more prominent post at the entrance. You rush back to the shore, eager to get back to the ship and convince the captain to sail the 50 miles south to Croatoan. Your mind is filled with images of reunion. You will see your daughter again. You will meet your 3-year-old granddaughter for the first time. You will bring them all home. But the weather, the eternal enemy of this entire enterprise, has other plans. The storm that was brewing the night before has returned with a vengeance. The sky darkens, the wind howls, and the sea turns into a churning chaos of massive waves. It's the beginning of the hurricane season on the Outer Banks, a notoriously dangerous time of year. Back on the ship, the captain, Abraham Koch, listens to your plea, but his eyes are on the storm. The ship is dragging its anchors, in danger of being driven onto the shore and smashed to pieces. One of their anchor cables breaks. They lose another anchor. The ship is now in grave danger. Koch makes a decision. It is too dangerous to stay here. It is certainly too dangerous to try and navigate the treacherous shoals around Croatoan Island in this weather. He tells you they must abandon the search and head for open sea to ride out the storm. You are aghast. You beg him. You are so close. But the captain's first duty is to his ship and his crew. He offers you a compromise. They will winter in the Caribbean and return in the spring to continue the search. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's better than nothing. You agree, but the storm has one more cruel twist in store. The winds are so fierce that they blow the Hopewell far off course, pushing it relentlessly east, out into the Atlantic. By the time they regain control of the ship, They are so far from the American coast that turning back is no longer an option. The currents and winds are against them. The decision is made for them. They are going home. To England. Here's a lesser-known tragic detail of this final moment. John White never set foot in America again. He was an old man, and he had spent his entire fortune on these attempts to find his family. He had no more resources, no more influence. He would live out the rest of his days in Ireland, writing letters, still trying to piece together what happened, still hoping for news. He died not knowing the final fate of his daughter and granddaughter. It's an ending of profound personal tragedy. Historians still debate that final, fateful decision by Captain Coke. Was the storm truly so bad that a search of Croatoan was impossible? Or was the privateer captain, having already lost several men and an anchor, simply unwilling to risk his valuable ship any further for what he saw as a fool's errand? Could they have waited out the storm in a safer inlet? We will never know. It was the final, heartbreaking piece of bad luck in a long chain of misfortune. It's the ultimate cosmic joke. You solve the puzzle, you find the final clue, but the library closes before you can check out the book. You, as John White, stand on the deck of the Hopewell as it sails east, away from your family. You look back at the receding coastline until it disappears. The word Croatoan is burned into your mind. A message of hope that you were never able to answer. The colonists were not lost. They knew exactly where they were. It was John White and the rest of the world who had lost them. The curtain of history falls, leaving your family and your colony forever on that distant shore, their story unfinished, their voices silenced by the wind and the waves. The story of your colony does not end with John White's departure. It simply transforms. It ceases to be a historical account and becomes one of the great American mysteries. A ghost story whispered around campfires. A puzzle for historians to endlessly debate. The single word, Croatoan, was not an ending, but the beginning of a legend. So what really happened to you? Over the centuries, 3 main theories have emerged, each with its own proponents and evidence. The first, and most widely accepted by modern historians, is the assimilation theory. This is the path we explored earlier. You, the colonists of Roanoke, facing starvation and abandonment, made the rational choice to move 50 miles south and merge with Manteo's people on Croatoan Island. You abandoned your English identity to survive, slowly intermarrying and adopting the culture of your hosts. This theory accounts for the dismantled houses, the lack of bodies, the Croatoan carving, and the absence of the distress cross. It also aligns with the later reports from John Lawson about gray-eyed natives on Hatteras Island and the enduring oral traditions of the Lumbee people. It's the most hopeful theory, suggesting not a tragic end, but a story of adaptation and survival. You weren't lost. You were found by a new family. The second theory is the massacre theory. This version suggests that while some colonists may have gone to Croatoan, the colony was ultimately wiped out by a hostile native force. The chief culprit in this theory is often identified as Powhatan, the powerful leader of a confederacy of tribes in the Chesapeake Bay region. This theory gained traction in the early days of the Jamestown settlement, founded in 1607. The Jamestown colonists, in their own struggles with the local people, heard stories from Powhatan himself that he had attacked and destroyed a group of white people who had been living among a rival tribe in the Chesapeake area. This is a documented historical claim from the Jamestown records. The timing fits. Perhaps a portion of your colony did attempt to move north to their originally intended destination, only to be caught in the middle of tribal conflicts and annihilated. This theory explains the violence, but contradicts the orderly scene John White found at the settlement. A third, more fragmented theory is the split up and lost at sea theory. This idea proposes that the colony broke into several smaller groups. The majority went to Croatoan, as planned. Another small group might have tried to sail back to England in the pinnace, a small boat left with the colony, only to be lost in a storm on the Atlantic. This could explain why no survivors ever made it back to tell the tale. This theory is largely speculative, but it accounts for the total lack of direct contact ever being re-established. It's a tragic vision of hope followed by disaster. Here's a final, little-known detail that adds another layer to the mystery. Archaeologists working on Hatteras Island, the former Croatoan, have found a number of English artifacts from the correct time, period mixed in with native pottery and tools. They found things like a Nuremberg token, part of a rapier hilt, and a piece of a slate writing tablet with a letter still faintly visible. This Croatoan project provides the strongest physical evidence yet that at least some of the colonists did live there. Historians will likely never stop debating your ultimate fate. Was it a story of successful integration? A brutal massacre? A tragic accident at sea? Or some combination of all three? The mystery is so enduring because it speaks to a fundamental American theme, the encounter between the old world and the new, and the thin, permeable line between civilization and wilderness. You went to the edge of the map and simply walked off it, leaving behind only a single enigmatic word. Your story became a cautionary tale, a foundational myth for a new nation. You are the lost colony, a permanent question mark carved into the heart of American history. You are not just a group of vanished people. You are a symbol of the profound and terrifying mysteries that lay hidden in the foundation of the modern world. You are a ghost story that just happens to be true. And so the trail goes cold, fading, into the mists of time and the shifting sands of the Outer Banks. The last image is not one of violence or despair, but of a quiet, deliberate choice. A group of people standing at the precipice of the unknown, deciding to leave one world behind and embrace another. Perhaps the true mystery isn't what happened to them, but what they became. Let the sounds of the story fade now, like the footsteps of the colonists walking away from their abandoned fort. Let the image of that lonely shore soften and blur, the letters Croatoan dissolving into the grain of the wood. The wind that whispers through the sea oats on Hatteras Island tonight might still carry their stories, but they are stories of a new life, not a lost one. The questions remain, but they can rest for the night. There is no need to solve the puzzle now. All that's left is the gentle, rhythmic sound of the waves on the shore, a sound that has not changed in all the centuries since. A sound that can carry you now gently into your own quiet sleep. Let go of the questions, let go of the mystery, and just drift on the tide of your own breathing, in and out, in and out. Sweet dreams.